Women voters. It is our Shaker tradition to present all candidates for local office to our voters. This forum provides the candidates a chance to introduce themselves and answer questions posed to all of them. This forum has a live audience and is being webcast in real time. After we finish tonight, the entire forum will be posted online in 3 separate sessions for the 3 elected offices covered tonight on the League of Women Voters Shaker Heights website and League of Women Voters Shaker Heights social media platforms. Our moderator is Lee Tucker. Ms. Tucker is chair of the Cleveland chapter of the League of Women Voters Greater Cleveland, where she has been chapter chair for Cleveland for more than 4 years. She is also the assistant chief financial officer for Cuyahoga County. Please welcome Ms. Tucker.
Thanks, Lynn. Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening for the Shaker Heights candidate forums. There will be 3 forums this evening. The first will be the judicial candidate forum, followed by the city council, and then lastly will be the school board candidate forum. I will be your moderator for tonight's forum, but before we get started, I'd like to go over a few guidelines for the candidate forums. We ask that candidates and their supporters refrain from wearing partisan items such as campaign buttons inside the room. Campaign materials may be placed on the literature tables outside in the lobby. So after the forums, be sure to pick up the candidate literature. Each candidate must appear in person at the time slotted for his or her race. No stand-ins are permitted. We ask the audience to avoid expressions of support or opposition to any candidate during the forum proceedings. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. During the question and answer session, each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to each question, and responses will be limited to 1 minute. Candidates on the municipal court judge panel will also have 1 minute for a closing statement after a question and answer session. Our timers, who are located in the front, raise your hands. We'll give a 30-second warning and a signal when their time is ended. Once your time is ended, I'll let you finish your thought, but try to wrap it up because we have 3 candidate forums, so we're going to stick very strictly to these time limits. The order of speaking has been determined by drawing the lots. The candidate who makes the first opening statement will make the last closing statement, and the candidate responses will rotate. Only written questions will be accepted. Cards for writing questions will be distributed to the audience before and during the forum, and in the chat feature, the live stream, and submitted in advance via email. For the people who are watching tonight via YouTube, you may submit questions to the Shaker Heights, that's one word, Shaker Heights, at leagueofwomenvotersgreatercleveland.org. Again, that's Shaker Heights at leagueofwomenvotersgreatercleveland.org. League question screeners will review submitted questions to avoid duplication, ensure readability, and avoid inappropriate or irrelevant questions. I want to give you a little bit background on each of the races before the debate. Before the forum. The municipal court judge is a Shaker Heights Municipal Court, and it covers Beachwood, Hunting Valley, Pepper Pike, Shaker Heights, and University Heights. There's 4 candidates for 1 position. The candidates will be filling an unexpired part of a 6-year term that runs through the end of 2023. The judge oversees a budget of approximately $2.3 million and at least 8 direct reports. The employees include 3 magistrates, 4 bailiffs, a probation officer, and an administrative staff. The salary is approximately $145,000. Because this is the only race in tonight's forum that is contested, the candidates will be allowed to provide the time for an opening and a closing statement. The other races will not. It'll just be an opening statement. Please remember to turn off or mute all cell phones, and we ask that all the audience avoid expressions of support or opposition to any candidate to keep it moving and so that you can hear the candidates' responses. So we will start off. The candidates were starting based on, they drew lots. And first of all, we have Mr. James Satola. We'll start off with his opening statement.
Do we leave the mask on or take
You can take them off.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Jim Satola, and I am one of the 4 candidates for the Shaker Heights Municipal Judge race, as you can see. I thank you for the opportunity to the League of Women Voters to be able to present ourselves to you tonight. In fact, I'm a graduate of Shaker High School, and I'm familiar with this small auditorium, being involved in the theater program a lot when I was here. But I just want to say I welcome the opportunity to run for and hopefully become the next Shaker Heights Municipal Court judge, because I think, as I have stated in other forums, judicial service is something I have wanted to do since I began law school in 1986. I graduated after a career in medical research. I went to Case Western Reserve University Law School, where I was on the law review. And after graduating, served as a law clerk to legendary federal judge John Manos here on the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Ohio, and then spent the next 20 years as a litigator with the law firm then known as Squire, Sanders, and Dempsey, with offices all around the world. While there, gained a huge amount of experience litigating large cases and small ones in courts throughout the country: municipal courts, common pleas courts, courts of appeals, federal trial courts, federal appeal courts, and even on 3 occasions, the Supreme Court of the United States. I won't be much longer here, but I just want to say that of the candidates, I think I bring the broadest amount of legal experience to this race, in the fact that, one, I've just been at it longer than all of the others, graduating law school in 1989, but also in the various types of legal service that I have done, not only as a law clerk in federal court, spanning every kind of civil and criminal case you could imagine, to state courts. And then I also served as a hearing officer, which is kind of a court of appeals judge for real estate valuation. So I, again, thank you for the opportunity to answer questions later on. And I hope you consider my candidacy. If you want further information, I do have a fairly extensive website that gives a large background: satolaforjudge.com, with the word spelled out. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Kelton Walton Keller, your opening statement.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to everyone here tonight. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about my candidacy. From the moment that I became a lawyer, I began representing clients in court. I've represented clients in municipal, state, and federal courts all over the state of Ohio, handling many criminal cases. I also have experience in civil litigation. I have, through that experience, learned what it's like to be in the position of a defendant, and my extensive criminal litigation experience was one of the reasons that I was appointed to the position of magistrate and later appointed to be an acting judge in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, because, as you may or may not know, the vast majority of the cases handled in the Shaker Heights Court are criminal and traffic in nature. And that experience that I have lends itself to my position that I'm currently in as a magistrate in Shaker Heights Court and an acting judge. And there are many things that I want to do to enhance the court. I'm very excited about these ideas. One thing that I think will immediately improve and protect the rights of defendants is to have a public defender present in court for all court proceedings. This is the way that I believe I can most immediately affect change in the lives of the clients of the court, who are the defendants who come before us. Most people who come into court are unrepresented by counsel at their arraignment. They're scared. They don't understand what they're doing. I know this not only from being on the bench, but from also holding the hands of my clients for years in litigation. And having an attorney with them to help them decide how to proceed, explain to them their rights, is necessary. It's not something that happens in most municipal courts, and it's something that I want to bring to the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, and I've thought through this idea. I also want to create a dedicated domestic violence docket to give more attention to those cases. I want to enhance the court technology, including improving a fully functioning online docket. And I want to continue the court's efforts towards bail reform. I am very happy for the opportunity to speak more about those ideas later. I am the most prepared for this position because of my experience in court and my experience as a magistrate. I was rated by all of the bar associations on Judge for Yourself as excellent. I received a perfect score on that process from my colleagues in the legal profession. It is also because of that experience and my preparedness that I was endorsed by the Cleveland Plain Dealer and that I was endorsed by the Shaker Heights Democratic Club. I have lived in this community, this court jurisdiction for my entire life. I'm raising my family here, and I want to be your judge in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court and use that experience to benefit the community and serve the community well. Thank you very much. I hope to earn your support on Election Day.
Thank you. Ms. Sydney Strickland-Saffold, your opening statement.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sydney Strickland-Saffold, and I too am grateful for you attending tonight's event and am excited to have the opportunity to present to you. I'm seeking your support for my candidacy in the November 2nd election as judge of the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. My vision for the court is to also improve upon the court. I am a practitioner downtown, and I am licensed in the United States Northern and Southern District Courts, as well as the United States Supreme Court. As a criminal defense attorney, my clientele and my experience has lent itself to my vision for our municipal court. The most important change that I intend to make in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court is to fold in and expand upon the pre-existing diversion docket, our diversion program that exists. I want the first point of contact with the court to include a pretrial diversion analysis that most importantly focuses on the mental health needs of defendants that come through our court. Many folks come through the municipal court for all the crimes are misdemeanor crimes in municipal court. And I'm hopeful to, I will in fact rather, initiate a program where we do a mental health analysis for each defendant, as oftentimes people are, their conduct is symptomatic of an underlying condition. And some folks don't have the wherewithal, the resource, or the access to things to the mental health treatment, or to the ability to identify these conditions that exist in order to treat them. And oftentimes these conditions are symptomatic, their conduct is symptomatic of these conditions. I believe that folding in a mental health component into the diversion program will keep our community safe. We'll be able to redirect that energy that these people have that have resulted in these criminal cases into getting services, treatment provided to them, dual diagnoses programs, and access to workforce development, as well as access to programming that will help us reduce recidivism and allow folks to have their cases adjudicated through the court and where they're eligible, and without having a conviction that's going to encumber them moving forward in life. I've been practicing in the criminal defense realm for the lion's share of my practice. I've litigated thousands of cases. I'm a trial attorney. I'm hopeful to bring that skill set and my willingness and hope to help people and help our community, keep our community safe, to the court as judge for the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Laura Creed, your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event tonight. For the first time in 27 years, the voters have an opportunity to select a new judge for the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. It is paramount that whoever is our next judge has broad legal experience and broad life experience. And I'm the candidate that has that qualifications. I have a career that spans almost 3 decades. I initially started in private practice, and I've spent the last 25 years of my career at the Court of Common Pleas in Cuyahoga County. There is no better training ground to be a judge than working in the Common Pleas Court. I've been a judicial staff attorney where I was the judge's right hand. And from there, I learned how to research and write opinions and make decisions. And I also had the opportunity to talk to the judge about why he or she was making that decision, and just bird's eye view of how to conduct hearings. So when I became a magistrate in 2015, I hit the ground running, and I knew how to listen to people and how to bring my own personal style to being a magistrate. And finally, I've created a court resource center at the Common Pleas Court. I direct that now, and that has been my greatest joy, my most proud accomplishment. And it's from there that I've really learned how people feel about coming into a court. They're scared, they don't know what to do, and it's the role of the court to be helpful and welcoming those people that come to our court. I've spent a lifetime with the belief that justice for all should truly mean justice for all. And I want to bring that to Shaker Heights, as I've done with my resource center. But also, I'd like to make some technology upgrades so that people understand where they need to be and what's happening in court. I want to have extended hours and virtual hearings. And I will continue to collaborate with the access to justice partners that I've acquired over my nearly 30 years in the law. I'm a trusted leader, not only in the community, but in the legal community. I've served as a co-chair of this League of Women Voters for the preceding 3 years, so I understand the issues that we have here in Shaker. I've also been on the board of my synagogue, the Bar Association. In addition, I'm a mentor, a teacher. I'm a parent of children that attended the Shaker Public Schools, and I just want to bring that experience to Shaker Heights. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll start with our question and answer session. Again, the questions, you have 1 minute to answer the questions. The timers up front will give you a 30-second warning as well as your final warning to stop. We'll start our first question. We'll just kind of go round robin and we'll rotate the questions, but the first question will be directed towards Mr. Satola. Other than being fair and impartial, what do you think is the most important quality in a judge and why?
Listening, the ability to listen to what people have to say, to learn what the case before you is about, to understand it, to actually truly understand it on all sides that are before the judge, to be able to render a fair decision. So that's maybe a related question, but the ability to listen and understand is probably the most important role that a judge has. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants me to repeat the question, just let me know. Ms. Keller?
Thank you. I believe the most important trait, other than being fair and impartial, that a judge has is being respectful. That includes not only listening, but also having the other qualities necessary to be a good judge. Knowledge of the law that is going on in the courtroom is extremely important. Being a good judge is not just about being an administrator or someone dealing with the budget. It's also about courtroom knowledge, trial experience, understanding the shoes of the litigators who are before you and the defendants who are before you. And I believe that it is so important to be respectful of everyone who comes into the courtroom. I have a reputation, having been on the bench for the past 5 years, for being respectful and listening and carefully considering every case that comes before me. And that is something that I believe is incredibly important to being a great judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sappho?
Thank you. I think the most important quality in a judge is having a vast experience dealing with different types of litigants. I believe it's very important to have the knowledge of the court, the rules of law, the most current status of the law. So the law is constantly changing. A judge needs to be abreast of the changes that exist in the law, but also be able to apply experience in having dealt with every type of litigant from every walk of life. In my practice, I've had the experience of dealing with people that most consider to be the least of us. I've heard every story and backstory that you could imagine that has existed, and it's provided me with the ability to see people, understand people, take my time with how we approach that person's situation, because each person that's litigating in the court is coming for a reason that is probably one of the most horrifying or difficult experiences they've ever had. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Creed?
Other than being fair and impartial, I think the most important trait is temperament for a judge. And what I mean by temperament, you need to listen more than you talk. You have to understand where people are coming from. My experience, my legal experience, and my broad life experience gives me a great view of that, especially people that are unrepresented. I know how they feel. When I conduct a hearing, I always explain to the parties, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is the standard. This is what you need to prove. And then I let them ask questions if they don't understand it. And then we proceed with the hearing. And when the hearing is done, I tell them what I've heard, and I tell them why I'm making the decision that I made. So I think it's important to have that kind of temperament where you listen to people and explain your decisions and understand where they're coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Ms. Walton Keller. What do you see as the biggest problem facing the Shaker Municipal Court today, and what would you do to fix or improve it?
The biggest problem that I see facing the Shaker Heights Municipal Court today is the lack of resources to help unrepresented defendants. One of the things that I would do is to have a public defender, as I mentioned in my opening statement, in court at all times to help people who come into court, the majority of whom are charged with criminal or traffic offenses, help them make the decision about how to proceed in their case. There are many, many times that someone who is scared will come before me and will say that they want to enter a plea without understanding the consequences that that will have on their life going forward. And by having a public defender come into court, I'll be able to help those people make the right decision as to how they should proceed and protect their constitutional rights. Equality for everyone is the most important thing to me, and that is the most important factor in how I feel about becoming a municipal court judge. I want to make sure that I treat everyone equally and that everyone, whether they have the funds to hire an attorney or not, has representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland-Saffold?
Thank you. The biggest problem facing Shaker Heights Municipal Court currently are policies that they affect people in the worst possible ways. On certain occasions. I have had the occasion and am actively practiced before the court. And one of the motivations for wanting to run for judge in this court is so I can protect the community and bring about change. I've represented individuals who have been arrested for stealing socks and underwear for their children that they couldn't afford to purchase. And there's a policy as dictated by the prosecutor that they must serve 10 days in jail. Under no circumstances was there any room to resolve these cases. Like I said before, I don't believe in encumbering individuals with a conviction where there are methods and other means and approaches to helping these individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Creed?
Yes, could you repeat the question?
Sure. What do you see as the biggest problem facing the Shaker Municipal Court today, and what would you do to fix or improve it?
Thank you. It's really all about access to justice. And the thing that really needs to be updated is the technology. I had someone come into the Court Resource Center and ask me when their court date was. I went online to find out and I couldn't figure it out. And I've been an attorney for almost 30 years. You have to have at least access to the court so that you even know when you need to show up. That's just basic. So definitely need some technology upgraded, and I would apply for grants for that. The other thing is the court needs to provide simple instructions and explanations to people. It needs to be welcoming and helpful. Courts cannot give legal advice, but there's a lot of things that courts can tell people. So I think it starts at the most basic level of access to justice. We need to start there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Satola?
I guess following on the same theme, whether it's access or accessibility, whether I see that as a problem, but it's one of the most intimidating things is not only, I do not practice a lot in municipal courts, but it's my understanding that just the court costs and fees to have your case heard can be exorbitant for many of the people appearing before the court, but also accessibility is said to make sure that there are resources for everyone before the court, no matter their understanding or their experience, for them to understand what is going on before the court. So, so I would say that the biggest thing to make sure of is that we are there for the people that need the court. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Strickland-Saffold. Would you see your election to the Shaker Municipal Court as a stepping stone to a higher court, or would you commit to serving a full term?
I would absolutely commit to serving a full term. I'm a daughter of this community. I attended Laurel School in Shaker Heights from preschool until I graduated. My parents live in Beachwood, Ohio. My grandparents live on Winchell Road. I live in the Lomond neighborhood as well. My children attend Shaker schools, and this is where I came home to the first chance I got once I finished my law school training. I want to help people. So in my criminal defense capacity, I chose my career so that I could help people. And when I see these injustices that I see happening throughout the justice system, the best way I can help more people is by serving as a judge. It's what I've intended to do my whole life. I intend on retaining this seat until I can't retain it any further, and am effectively term limited by age, as it were. But I intend on being in this community. I intend on being a fixture in this community, and I hope to help and preserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Creed?
Thank you. Obviously, with a career of 30 years already, this is not a stepping stone. This is a final destination. This is the community that I love and I want to serve. So no, this is not a stepping stone for me. I just want to bring everything I have, my legal experience and my life experience and my dedication to access for justice, and bring that all to bear here in Shaker. So no, this is not a stepping stone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Satola?
Okay, I will answer the question, quite frankly, being candid. It would be my intent to serve a full term or two. That's with my age. That is the most that I could really do at this particular point. Again, like Ms. Creed, I've been an attorney for 36 years, so there's not a lot of different opportunities to do that. But as many of you know, I have run for other judicial positions because frankly, I have experience at all levels of the court, from trial to appeals in federal and state courts. So honestly, yes, I would intend to serve a full term, but if an opportunity came up for, say, being appointed or something of that nature, I would certainly consider it. I mean, I think I would owe you that honesty. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Walton Keller?
Thank you very much. My desire to be elected to the Shaker Heights Municipal Court is not a stepping stone for me. I was born and raised in this community, as I said, and I'm raising my 3 children here. I was a municipal court lawyer when I was in practice. About 50% of my practice was in municipal courts. I was raised by a municipal court criminal defense lawyer. I love the law. I love helping people. I have developed so much knowledge in my area of law that my colleagues ask me to come back and teach municipal court seminars on legal education. I love being in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court. The past 5 years of experience that I've gained as a magistrate and acting judge has shown me that I was right to accept the position 5 years ago. And I knew that taking that position would prepare me the most to be the judge in the future of the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, where I want to be for my career. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we will start with Ms. Creed. How would you protect the rights of victims of crime?
Thank you. The victims of crime, there's a lot of resources that I would point them in the direction of. Like I said, with my years of experience, I have gained contacts and people that I've partnered with and collaborated with. For instance, the Family Justice Center is one that comes to mind immediately. But there are a lot of other resources out there, the Rape Crisis Center. There's also a Victim for Crimes Fund. So there's a lot of different resources, but I've been fortunate enough to collaborate and partner with these many legal partners. And I would definitely reach out to them and have them come to the court and help any victims of crime that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Satola?
Oh, I didn't realize I was second again. The easiest answer to that, quite frankly, is one to apply the law fairly to everyone that is there. I think what comes into this as well is to apply the applicable law. Supreme Court Justice Mike Donnelly and others have written papers on prosecutors often allowing criminal defendants to plea to charges that are less than what they actually committed or that are not applicable. And I think we have to look to victims to make sure that if someone does choose to plea to some fault that they did, that it's honestly and fairly treated, that obviously prosecutors have leeway and as people should be given a second chance, but also to apply the law as it is written and not as it is possibly allowed to be applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walton Keller?
Thank you very much. One of the things that I've proposed is to create a domestic violence docket. And the reason that I have made this proposition is that I have seen an increase in offenses of violence, and there's a national trend in an increase in domestic violence. And I believe that a domestic violence docket would bring together the stakeholders in municipal court, such as victims advocates. The court already has a relationship with other agencies, such as the Journey Center, that help victims in domestic violence and other violent offense cases. And I will have a probation officer, the prosecutor, a defense attorney, and all of the stakeholders come together in order to properly address those cases and give those cases the attention that they need to make sure that victims' rights are protected, and make sure that once a court hears a domestic violence case, the judge might not find out what happens in that case until the end of the case and won't know if a protection order is being complied with, something like that. So I would have a domestic violence docket to make sure that I stay on top of protecting victims' rights. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Strickland-Saffold?
Thank you. The judge of the Shaker Heights Municipal Court is not only the judge that hears the cases, but the judge is also the administrative judge. As was mentioned in the intro given before the forum started, the judge manages the budget for the court. I would have a dedicated staff person available to victims as an advocate that can be there for respond and present with victims at each and every hearing that victims attend. There's no need to point them in the right direction to individuals. There's no need to outsource their needs and the things that we can provide to them. Domestic violence is the most serious and most violent crime that this court will ever hear, but there are victims of all sorts of cases that need to be accounted for. The judge has the ability and the resources to provide for that and budget for a person to be dedicated to the court for the purposes of serving those victims' needs, because the victims are entitled to equal representation as well.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Satola. What will you do as judge that will most positively affect Shaker's youth and the future generations of young citizens in our city?
Well, that would be easy for me. Is one of the things that I've really been dedicated to my entire career is education and trying to be in the community to let people know about my sincere love for the rule of law and the importance of the courts. I have for many years taught civics and constitutional rights in the Cleveland and East Cleveland high schools, and also at the high school and college level throughout, teach about the law and about, frankly, the legal system. So, going to the schools, perhaps even holding court at schools to introduce students to what the court is really about and know that the court is part of their community and not something to fear. So maintaining the importance of educating the community about the court would be something central to me.
Thank you. Ms. Walton Keller?
Thank you. Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thanks.
What will you do as judge that will most positively affect Shaker's youth and the future generations of young citizens in our city?
As judge of the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, I will set a good example for the youth in our cities by serving with humility, by treating people with respect. I will continue the court's practice of having students come into the court to have mock trials and engage with the judge and the court staff so that they understand the court process, answer questions. I feel that as judge of a municipal court, you are usually the face that people see. Most people don't find themselves in the common pleas court during their lifetime. They find themselves in a municipal court, whether it's with a family member or hearing stories from a family member about their experience in municipal court. And I believe that it is so important for the judge to present the justice system in a way that makes everyone know that they will be treated fairly in that court. And as judge of the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland-Saffold?
Thank you. When I'm elected judge to the Shaker Heights Municipal Court, I will be the first ever elected Black individual elected to the bench and the first woman of color elected to the bench to serve for Shaker Heights Municipal Court. Representation matters. Having the youth of our community see someone that looks like them, and we live in such a diverse community, and they can relate to and identify with is hugely important. Beyond that, and throughout my candidacy and before it, I have been establishing relationships with the local schools. There is a group of young judges in Houston, Texas, that have established a program that runs on the weekends for young kids to come into the court and they learn what their rights are. The most positive and impactful thing that I intend to do as judge for the Shaker Heights Municipal Court is have an educational program made available to each of the 5 school districts so that children can come in and learn your rights as a citizen of the United States and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Creed?
Thank you. I've spent my career teaching and mentoring our youth, and it's one of my great joys. In particular, the Stokes Scholars Program at the Bar Association. I keep up with my students that I've mentored, and I would continue to do that here at Shaker Heights Municipal Court. I think it's very important to teach. As a matter of fact, I taught a class here last Friday to the criminology class and the TOK class, and the kids had some really great questions, and so it was really a thrill to come and teach. So I continue teaching, I would continue mentoring, and I would also offer court in the classroom. We do that in Common Pleas Court, where we actually hold a hearing actually here in the school, so that the students can see, the judge and the defendant and the representation that they have. And so I think it's really important to bring it directly to the students. Thank you.
And our last question, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get to all the questions, but I'll end it with this question. How do you see the court's role in the likelihood of an increase in evictions in the next few months as a result of the national COVID pandemic and subsequent increases in unemployment? And when I get to you, if you need me to repeat the question, just let me know. And I will start with Ms. Walton Keller.
I won't ask you to repeat it on the first one. I see the court as playing an important role, although the court needs to remain impartial. So the court needs to make sure that the rights of tenants and landlords are protected. However, the court can provide resources, and we have partnered with legal aid in order to make sure, and I was instrumental in developing those resources, packets of information distributed to people, working with legal aid to make the court available if attorneys want to appear and represent people in eviction cases. This is absolutely a crisis, and the court needs to do everything it can to make sure that people's rights are protected, including those of the rights of tenants who are struggling during this time, while maintaining the appropriate level of neutrality that is appropriate and required of a municipal court judge. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland-Saffold?
Thank you. So the eviction rate has grown exponentially, or I guess the tension as it pertains to evictions and landlord-tenant relationships. That is a docket that the Shaker Heights Municipal Court carries. I believe that the most important thing that the judge in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court can bring with respect to these issues is an alternative dispute resolution mechanism. In order to try to resolve these cases and these situations amicably, especially in light of the struggle that is presented with folks financially for the with respect to tenants, and as well as protect the rights of landlords. But alternative dispute resolution and mediation will be key and paramount to trying to amicably resolve these situations before litigants have to actually initiate the litigation process. And that's something that I intend on bringing to the court, pandemic or otherwise. Hopefully we get through this soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Creed?
I currently serve on the advisory committee for the Right to Counsel program, which you may have heard of. It's in Cleveland, in the city of Cleveland, they have an ordinance that people are entitled to counsel if they meet certain guidelines. It's a partnership between legal aid and United Way. So I've been part of this program. I sit on their advisory committee. I'm well aware of what they're doing, and they're looking to expand. And I think Shaker Heights is the perfect place for them to expand. They have a 93% success rate in their first year. So it's important for the court to be neutral because landlords have rights and tenants have rights, but we have to make sure that everyone is taken care of. I would bring the Right to Counsel program, hopefully, to Shaker. We could expand it here. Like I said, I already have the connections because I sit on the advisory committee, and I think it would be a really important program here in Shaker. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Satola?
Yeah, I don't think you'll find a lot of diversion or disagreement among the four of us as to the importance of the eviction crisis and what happened when with the Supreme Court and the Sixth Circuit decisions that the CDC moratoriums had to end. One of the two ideas or two things that have already been expressed are true. One is to encourage and find alternative resources that are available for people that are facing eviction. And then, as Ms. Saffold said, a lot can be done, especially through municipal courts, through mediation or trying to get the parties together to see if there is something outside of a legal solution that may be done through a payment plan or the like. If you look on my record, you'll see that I actually have extensive mediation training through a program on negotiation that is conducted by Harvard Law School. And it's something where you learn a lot about what's important to the parties. And often that's a solution in the middle can be found. And I think that's something that would be a factor here.
Thank you. And now it's time for our closing statements from the candidates. And again, reminder, 1 minute for your closing statement, and we'll start with Ms. Creed.
So people have asked me, why do you want to be judge in the Shaker Heights Municipal Court? And I say, I want to bring my broad legal and life experience to bear here in Shaker, the community that I love. This would be the culmination of my legal career. Judge Montgomery, who's in the audience tonight, is a beloved leader of our community. But now that she's retired, it's time for a change. And I want to be that change. I want to bring everything I've learned in my 30 years as a lawyer here to Shaker Heights Municipal Court. Access to justice is so important, and I can make a difference here in the community that I love. Sometimes people are unsure of what to do, but I want to make sure that they know what's happening and they understand their rights and that they feel like they've gotten a fair shake. That's really important, and we want to bring that to our court here. I want to bring my legal experience and my life experience to bear. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saffold?
Thank you. I want to bring a reflection of our community to the court that serves our communities. I want to be the first elected woman of color to sit on this bench, and I want to bring my experience as a criminal defense litigator, having tried and litigated thousands of cases, to the bench. I want folks to feel like they're seen. My nature as a person, I'm a helper. I want to help our community by keeping it safe. I want to reduce recidivism in our community by implementing and expanding upon the programming that already exists there and making it more comprehensive so that we help the individuals who are facing the criminal charges, and we help our community by keeping it safe by redirecting those energies and fixing the person. That's the way we get to the root of the problems that present themselves in the court. I want to make sure that justice is accessible, it's equitable, and it is transparent. There will be no disparate impact in sentencing moving forward. I want to serve the people that I live around, and I'm grateful for you guys coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walton Keller?
Thank you. The word judge is not only a noun, it's a verb. I'm the only candidate who is before you tonight who has practiced in municipal court and has also been a magistrate and acting judge in municipal court. I am the most prepared for this position. During the past year and a half, I've helped to see the court through COVID. I've obtained grants on behalf of the court for technology and to help defendants who can't afford other resources. I want to continue those practices. I want to continue the existing practices in the court, such as our already existing mediation docket for things like evictions. I want to continue the court's great practice of diverting cases. And I want to treat people fairly and with respect and be the face of the court where people find themselves in the cities of Shaker, Beachwood, University Heights, Pepper Pike, and Hunting Valley. And I thank you all for listening so carefully tonight and for your time. And I hope to earn your support on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Satola?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to use my concluding minute to again thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to be able to speak with you. I think my simple message will be, I ask you each to do your own independent research, not only what you do here today listening to us or what you may see in campaign mailings or literature that we may have, but also just talk to your community. Do search the internet as to what we've done. It's hard in 1 minute to say what this is, but I'll say that I think not only the breadth of my legal experience is something that would be an advantage to the court, but also I can say another lesson I've learned in the last 8 years as an Alzheimer's caregiver is the importance of listening and caring and understanding the dignity that all people deserve. It's something that's really been very close to me these last years, and probably the most rewarding part of my life was to do that. My mother passed away from Alzheimer's almost exactly today, 1 year ago. And I will say that's a lesson in life that's important, that is part of who I am. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to our candidates. And just very quickly, we're going to be setting up for the next debate, or I'm sorry, forum. I keep saying debate. And in the meantime, if you want to take a bio break, just step outside and someone will direct you to the men's and ladies' room. And now we're going to get set up. Thank you. Okay, we're getting ready to start the Shaker Heights City Council candidate forum. So if everyone can return to the auditorium, it'd be great. Okay, great. The Shaker Heights City Council, there are three candidates that's running and for three positions, so they're unopposed. It is for a 4-year term. The terms are staggered. There are a total of 7 city council members. 4 other city council members have terms expiring in 2 years. Council members do not have wards or neighborhoods. They each serve the community at large. They oversee an annual budget of roughly $66 million, operating an $8 million capital budget. Council members generally have 3 council meetings / work sessions plus committee meetings each month. Council members do not have any employees. The salary is approximately $10,444. $10,444, sorry about that. And with that being said, we'll get started. Again, remind people to mute their cell phones. They haven't already done so. And we'll just go again round robin. I'll start with, if I pronounce anybody's name incorrectly, please let me know. I'm sorry. We'll start with the opening statements. There's a 1-minute opening statement for each candidate. The first candidate that will provide an opening statement is, how do you pronounce your last? I'm sorry, that's correct. A 3-minute opening statement. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the closing statement from last candidate meeting. Mr. Claytor?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ifeolu Claytor,
Okay.
and it is a pleasure to be with you this evening. A little bit about me. Again, Ifeolu Claytor. I'm a native of Shaker Heights, Ohio. I'm actually a 3rd-generation resident. My mom grew up on Keswick, my dad grew up on Warrington, and my grandfather actually was a realtor here who helped integrate neighborhoods like Ludlow and worked on equal opportunity housing throughout the region. So I am homegrown. This is very serendipitous. It's an amazing opportunity to be here before you this evening and give a little bit about myself to you. I went through Shaker schools K through 12. And after graduating, I went to Miami University, studied political science and social justice studies, focusing on crime law and social justice, participated in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts there, serving within student government, and also sitting on our presidential search committee to find the current university president. One of the reasons that I was chosen for that position to represent all of our students, over 16,000 students, in doing that is because I had a unique perspective and I could voice my opinions respectfully. And that's why the committee actually chose me to join as a student member. And so that's something I hold really near and dear. Coming home, I worked in nonprofits, working for the ACLU of Ohio and then the LGBT Community Center. But one of the biggest experiences I've had working in this area is working with Burgess and Burgess strategists as a research associate, working to analyze how constituents feel about their communities, how they feel about their schools, how they feel about the city or the county government and the services they're receiving. Being taught how to really analyze constituent responses and also listen to community leaders to get a really good idea of what the community feels. And that's something I think that I can bring as a member of this council. While I'm running, I want to be one of the critical thinkers helping to move Shaker progressively forward. We're going in a great direction. I just want to join in and help and use my skills and talents and my lens to make sure that we are moving forward continuing to move forward in a great direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Trey Roeder next.
Thank you. I'm Trey Roeder. I have been on council for almost 8 years, and I also currently serve as the vice mayor. I'd like to start off by thanking Lynn Lilly, who's in the back of the room, who did a lot of work for tonight, as well as everyone from the League of Women Voters. My colleagues, Ife, we're looking forward to welcoming you to council, and Ann, and Mr. Zimmerman is also in the back of the room here. He is stepping down after serving our city for a very long period of time. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I own a small business. I have 2 sons who are products of the Shaker Public Schools. And when it comes to public service, I'm constantly riding the coattails of my wife, Elizabeth, who has been involved with all sorts of PTO groups and volunteer associations. She currently serves as the president of the Shaker Band Boosters. I'd like to focus on 3 items that I have been passionate about and plan to continue to work on in the coming years. The first is our mental health response team. Interestingly, in the prior panel, you heard a lot of discussion around mental health. And we, working with my colleague Ann Williams, a group of people in the community and a variety of other stakeholders, we put in place a program we're very excited about, just passed the final legislation in the last week, that will help provide services in an unprecedented way to our residents proactively and reactively when they have mental health needs. The second area that's near and dear to my heart is collaboration between the city, the schools, and the library. When I first ran 9 years ago, this is something that I talked about, and many of us have been working on it since. This has morphed into what we're now calling Forward Together. By working together, we can not only improve the efficacy of what we're trying to do, but we can drive cost out of the system as well. Finally, I'd like to talk about our neighborhoods and our community. So every number of years, we survey the residents. What do you love about Shaker Heights? What are the top reasons why you stay here in Shaker Heights? The last time we did that survey, the top reason, the number one reason why people stay in Shaker Heights was their neighborhoods, the sense of community that they feel. So I've had the pleasure of serving as the chairman of the Neighborhood Revitalization and Development Committee for the last 2 years. It was in good shape when I received it from Ann, who served as the chair before then. And we've all been working on our neighborhoods and our communities to keep them strong and diverse and safe. So in closing, I appreciate everyone being here tonight, participating in the process, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Williams?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ann Williams, and I'm running for my third term on Shaker City Council. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and a special thanks to the League for hosting us as you have every election cycle, and we truly appreciate that. I'm running again because there is work that I've been doing for the last few years, the last 8 years, that I really want to continue. And I'm going to also highlight 3 areas. And I picked these 3 areas because they are areas that have involved great involvement of our residents. And that personally is my favorite thing to do, is to work with the residents and then with our administration and staff in order to bring things forward in Shaker that perhaps might not have come forward if it had just come through council or staff. So for example, the first one is, the 3 areas are the Sustainability Committee, the DEI initiatives that we're doing, and the Mental Health Response Team. And the Sustainability Committee has evolved over the last few years into a full committee, a full council committee. So the council committee has council members, staff, and residents on the committee. But also the Sustainability Committee has 3 subcommittees. And these subcommittees are staffed by residents and chaired by residents. And these are based on the residents' individuals' interests and education. And for instance, the 3 subcommittees that exist right now are Stormwater and Green Space, Renewable Energy, and then there's a High School Advisory Group. And these committees are amazing. They just come up with these great ideas. For example, I'll just give you one right now. The Renewable Energy Committee is sponsoring a residential solar tour this Saturday. There's information that's out there, and it is an opportunity to go see what other residents have done in the community. And it's a wonderful opportunity. And I just really appreciate the excitement and energy of these residents that are so involved. The second area, the DEI committee, also is evolving. It is going from the Human Relations Task Force. I worked on this task force with fellow council members Carmela Williams and Sean Malone. It is now evolving into a full council committee where we will again have residents, staff, and council members on this committee. And again, like the Sustainability Committee, it is also going to have subcommittees. The city sent out requests for residents to express their interest, and the city got over 90 responses, and they're in the process of going through those responses and putting together the committee and subcommittees. And I think that's going to be a wonderful experience. And finally, the Mental Health Response Team, which Trey mentioned as well. We're very excited that this has now gotten through council, and I think this is going to be a great opportunity to provide additional resources for our community. So in sum, I'm just looking forward to continuing this work, continue to work with our residents and bring their ideas forward and make our city better together. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll start with our questions from the audience. What do you see as the biggest problem facing the city today? And what would you do to fix or improve it? Starting with Mr. Clater.
The biggest issue the biggest issue I think is dealing with our infrastructure, and that kind of also goes into helping our residents deal with caring and maintaining their homes. Clearly, when you live in a historic suburb like Shaker Heights, there are issues that come with 100-year-old homes. And I'm sure a lot of our residents and people who are watching online or people who are here in person are aware of that. So making sure that our residents are educated on what opportunities are available, what assistance might be available if necessary, as well as us working to be financially smart and improving our infrastructure when it comes to the sewers and other things in our city that need to be maintained.
Thank you. Mr. Roeder?
I will just reinforce what Mr. Claytor said because it's spot on. Infrastructure, and in particular, as he mentioned at the end there, the sewers. We have spent and will need to continue to spend a significant amount of money to improve our stormwater management. Many people in Shaker Heights have experienced flooded basements, roads that fill up with water. We have these so-called 50-year storms a lot more frequently than 50 years. In fact, we had one just about 18 months ago. So the expense and the importance of paying attention to stormwaters and stormwater management is something that might not be the most exciting topic, but when it doesn't work well, it creates all sorts of problems for our community.
Thank you. And Ms. Williams?
Yes, thank you. I would agree that infrastructure is a major priority, but I would also suggest I've been thinking about this as a kind of a broader concept. I think one of the challenges is for Shaker to decide what our priorities are. And I think this is especially challenging as we come out of COVID and things have changed. And maybe part of this is feeling this gap in meeting with residents. Since we're back having block parties now, but there's kind of this gap of time of hearing from our residents directly. I think it's important that we focus on our priorities. I think Forward Together is a good way for addressing some of our priorities, especially in our facilities. I think it's important to reach out to our residents, and we as council and city staff are working on what our priorities are as well. Because as we've seen, for instance, with the Horseshoe Lake, information that's been going around, we have a lot of different priorities and people have very strong feelings about what we should be working on. So I think that's the first step, is to really focus on what our priorities are for our community. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I'll start with Mr. Roeder. The city recently added a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer and is forming a DEI committee. What would be your priorities for those efforts?
Yes, thank you. So as you mentioned, we recently hired a DEI director, and we made that the highest level other than our CAO because it was that important to us as a community. This role is, and the individual who's in it is looking at all of our processes and how we do everything as a city. And that is a job that requires prioritization and sequencing of all of the different issues. So what she's doing right now is she's met with different members of council, different members of the community, and is working through what our priorities are, to Ann's point, which is a good one. As we become more clear in our priorities, this clearly is one of them. But what within DEI should we focus on? Colleen Jackson is helping us figure that out.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. The city recently added a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer and is forming a DEI committee. What will be your priorities for those efforts?
Thank you. And as I did mention, the DEI committee is one of the things I'm most excited about, to see this evolution. And as Trey mentioned, I think the focus initially is on internal, looking at what the city does through an equity lens, through a DEI lens. The second part of it is really working with the community and what the city can do, working with its residents into making sure that the city is as inclusive as it can be. And I think putting together the subcommittees is really going to be it's going to be a wonderful resource for bringing the voices of our residents to the city staff, and through this committee. But I think Colleen is really well situated to help us guide exactly what our priorities are for specific projects.
Thank you. Mr. Claytor?
Thank you for the question. I think that similarly to my future colleagues, following the direction of our current director, I think, is important. But when it comes to prioritization, I think when we talk about DEI, a lot of times it becomes like a buzzword, and it becomes cool. It's a trendy topic, but really focusing on the equity and inclusion. You can have diversity in a room, but not be listening and including everyone's voice, or really incorporating those ideas to make an equitable decision. So I think that's really the focus. I agree that reviewing the policies that are currently in place and analyzing every decision that could come before our council or before the city is critically important. But the prioritization is really going to be with inclusion, in my opinion.
Thank you. Next question, I'll start with Ms. Williams. Neighborhood revitalization is an ongoing challenge. The city still owns more than 100 vacant lots. What are your thoughts for best usage of those vacant lots?
Thank you for that question. We have had a reform to the vacant lot program over the last couple of years. I think it was a couple of years that it actually, well, over the past year, it has come into place. And this has really been an effort on the part of the city to make these side lots available to residents. And I think that this is really important, and it has been a very good initiative, and we've seen a lot of action on this, residents taking over side lots, and we've seen developers now for the first time in years really expressing interest in coming in and building on some of these side lots. So I think it's really important to build back the neighborhoods in innovative ways. And I think we've got some developers that have some different ideas. They're not all the same, which I think is very important for the diversity in our neighborhoods. And I think we're on the right path with these side lots, which is to encourage and incent for residential development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Clater. How should the city collaborate with the school
Did you guys
district?
get the-
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip somebody?
Yeah.
Both of them.
Wait a minute, I did. one, two, three.
And give such a thorough answer. Maybe-
Oh, I'm sorry. I started with, okay. Next is Mr. Clater. Sorry.
All is
I
well. All is
apologize.
well. I definitely agree with Ann in that that's something actually one of the reasons why I was interested, because I grew up in Moreland, and a lot of the lots that we have that are vacant are in the Moreland neighborhood. So something I'm excited to join the council and really look into is how we can encourage more people to build houses in Shaker. Yes, it's great to have developers who want to do that also, but encouraging other like individual families to kind of create what they want to see, so that we know that people are really getting what they want. Also, I think one of the biggest strengths in our community is the diversity of housing stock. And so allowing more people to kind of have input on that and join in that process, allowing individuals who want to be members of our community to go into that and design what their houses want to be like, and that they'll be sustainable, because that's something. Updating a house is hard. Building a house that's sustainable is a lot easier. So those types of opportunities I'm really excited for when we come to managing and selling the vacant lots to upcoming residents.
Thank you. Mr. Roeder, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good.
Oh,
Thank you. Ann and Ife really did give thorough answers to this question. So I'll briefly highlight on what they touched on and then take it in a little bit different direction. And that is that we have streamlined this process significantly in the last year. It is easier and less complicated to gain one of these side lots. It helps the city because there's an expense to maintaining these lots. It also helps the resident and improves the home in the area. The other point that I wanted to mention is also within neighborhood revitalization and development. It's of course not just about the homes. And one of our members of our staff, Mr. Colin Compton, has led some amazing conversations. He encourages residents to be casual, and he removes the power dynamics from the conversation. And we openly talk about how to improve the neighborhoods, what we can do, what the city can do, what residents can do, and so on. So that, in liaison with housing programs and other things we're doing, is helping make our neighborhood stronger.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I will start with Mr. Clater. How should the city collaborate with the school district on controlling cost and in delivering services?
Well, I think that Mr. Roeder talked about this really really candidly, and I think working with the four together to make sure that costs are managed, making sure that we're using our assets here in the city efficiently when it comes to partnering with the city, with the schools, and with the library, because clearly there's not a lot of room for us to expand. So what we have to use smartly and make sure that we are. I think the Four Together initiative is really something that is effective because it really allows for cross community or cross between the council, the schools, and library to communicate effectively on how we can use those resources.
Thank you. Mr. Roeder?
I don't support that. Just kidding.
I was
we-
like, whoa.
We like to keep you on your toes. Heather Weingart is here, the president of our school board, as well as Jeff Isaacs. All of our school board has been very involved with this. Our colleagues at the library also have been part of this conversation. We've had this conversation for years. And the conversation is about how can we maintain or improve services at a lower cost? Or said differently, how can we increase the efficacy of what we're trying to do? Because when you look at something like hunger, safety, these aren't issues that are only school board issues or city issues or library issues or even government issues. It's all of us that can work together to do a better job improving the efficacy. So that's what we're doing. Forward Together is one step along the process, but I wouldn't think about that as the end all be all. This is an ongoing discussion and dialogue, and Forward Together is very important. We hope to have meaningful output from that in the next 6 months, but we plan to continue from there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot to add after those very thorough questions. I would just say that I think I agree, especially with the final comment from Mr. Roeder, that Forward Together is just a starting point. But I think it's a really terrific starting point. I think it has provided a depth of engagement that we haven't had before between the school board and the city and the library. Very in-depth detail about facilities and services, and this will continue beyond Forward Together. But I am also hopeful for a very positive outcome and some measurable outcomes from the process itself, and then leading us forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, I'll start with Mr. Roeder. There have been community questions about equal treatment of Black and white citizens by the Shaker Heights Police Department. What are your thoughts, and how can we ensure fairness?
Thank you for that question. Race and equity are at the center of what we're focused on right now as a council. As we mentioned, we've talked about the hiring of the DEI director, and we know that Shaker Heights has talked about this as long as Shaker Heights has been around. But in particular, we go back to the 60s and some of the kitchen table conversations, but we've never fully lived into what we want to be. So I think this is about not only talking the talk, which Shaker Heights has done for a long time, but figuring out how we can live into this. Specific to the police, our police officers have training on DEI. We continue to monitor cases anytime there's a question or a situation that comes up. So there isn't one boilerplate answer on how to fix this, other than we need to be vigilant and we need to continue to engage in the difficult conversations.
Thank you. Ms. Williams?
Yeah, I would add to that as well, that we do need to engage. I think the most important thing is to have the open discussions and the open conversations. And I think that has really happened. I think we are fortunate to have a police chief that is willing to engage with our residents directly one-on-one and address some of these difficult issues that come up. And things happen in Shaker, and sometimes it can be something that just looks bad. It can be something that maybe there was an inappropriate response. But what I've been pleased with is the ability for the police chief and members of the police force to interact directly with residents raising these concerns. And I don't think we can solve anything or address any of these issues, work on our behavior, unless we have these open conversations. So I think that we will continue to have those, continue to work, and recognize that we have a lot of work to do as council, as a city, as police. I think we all have a lot to learn and a lot of ways to move forward to work better together. Thank you.
Mr. Claytor?
I think that one way that we can look at this, and there's not one way, but one way that comes to, there's not one silver bullet answer to this, but I think one way that we can look at this is just looking at where our officers are stationed. I live at Van Aken and Lee. It is it's often that you'll see cars pulled over at Chagrin and Lee, in that area. But it's less common that if I'm driving down Shaker Boulevard that I see those same stops. So thinking about where our officers are placed, I think that is a big thing that kind of leads into how often or which people or which residents or which drivers in our community are being stopped and how they're being treated. I think that's one thing that we should look at, but also just as we continue and growing in our DEI efforts, really analyzing what that means, where we can improve and what other communities that are moving progressively forward in police reform are doing. I think there's a lot that we are a great community, but there's also always room for improvement and room to learn.
Thank you. And our final, I think we have time for one more question. We'll start with Ms. Williams. What is your opinion of the new mental health response team program, and does it go far enough?
Well, thank you for that question. And yes, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the mental health response team pilot program that we put together, I think is terrific. I'm very excited about this. Does it go far enough? When we first started this conversation and Councilman Roeder got the ball running, he got a group of residents together, invited me as well, and we had these conversations. And when we first started talking about this, we had in mind maybe a different kind of program that embedded that eliminated any kind of police response, but it was really truly just a mental health response. There are programs like this out in Oregon and in a lot of cities. It became clear that was a little overly ambitious, and we ended up with the proposal that we have right now, which is a pilot program, and we're working with Metro Health and one of their providers, and they're very excited about it because this is a whole new kind of program. So I think it's a great program. It's a first step. We're going to be reviewing it. One of the best things about it, I'll stop in a second, is that it's going to collect very necessary data that we haven't had in the past so that we can better analyze how to help our residents in these mental health crisis situations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Claytor?
I would agree with Ann wholeheartedly. I know that there are some residents who really would like to see us move a little bit faster in moving towards having just a mental health response team where law enforcement is now also present. But I think what we see in the data is that there aren't necessarily enough instances where that would be necessary to necessitate the cost of that. But I think that we are moving in the right direction. I'm excited to continue to analyze that program and see how we can improve it and see what's necessary and see how we can work with some of our neighboring communities to engage them and get them to move in the same direction.
Thank you. And Mr. Roeder?
Yes, thank you. Both of my colleagues, soon to be colleague, have explained this well. Governing is about balancing a variety of competing interests. And ideally, some of us would have liked to see a police-free mental health response in those situations where we could have that. But that required us to be better at discerning when that call comes in, if it's a mental health only call or one that might need a police presence, and we're not there yet. And it requires a level of training and capability within the overall system that we weren't there yet on either. So could it be better? Yes. Did we do the best we could? I think so. I'm very excited about this pilot. It is groundbreaking. This is not something that other communities have done. This is not something that's present in the county. Ann mentioned, Councilmember Williams mentioned one of the examples we had to work with, but there weren't many examples that we had to base this off of. So I think it's a very good start. We're very excited about it, and we'll learn and we'll continue to do better over time.
Thank you. Well, thank you. We'd like to give our candidates a big round of applause. Thank them for coming out and sharing their thoughts with us. We're going to set up for our next forum. And in the meantime, I'd like to give you a brief information about the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters provides a comprehensive website that can help any voter figure out where to register, important deadlines and other dates, and what is on your ballot. Go to vote411.org / and then put in your state. And this will be accurate and unbiased information from the League of Women Voters. In the next election here in Ohio, the earliest date for early voting is October 5th for Shaker voters, but October 7th for the jurisdictions that had a September 4th primary, which includes the city of Cleveland. If you're interested in updates on what is the redistricting process in Ohio, you can go to the League of Women Voters.ohio.org's website. We have advocated against gerrymandering for at least 50 years. No matter which political party created the map, we are part of a Fair District of Ohio consortium. The League of Women Voters of Ohio is a party to a lawsuit challenging the Ohio House and Senate maps and focused on alleged violations of Section 6 of the Ohio Constitution regarding proportional representation. Thank you. Two minutes. You want to get started? Okay, let's get started then. I guess everyone's returned. Next up. Oh, go ahead, take your time. Next up is our Shaker Heights Board of Education candidates. There are 2 candidates plus 1 write-in candidate for 3 positions, so they're unopposed. There are 4 4-year terms. The terms are staggered. There are a total of 5 school board members. 2 other school board members have terms expiring in 2 years. The school board members also do not have wards or neighborhoods. They each serve the community at large. The school district includes all of Municipal Shaker Heights plus a portion of City of Cleveland around Shaker Square. The board members oversee annual expenditures of about $130 million. Board members supervise 2 employees, the superintendent and the treasurer. Board members generally have 2 board meetings, work sessions each month plus committee meetings. There is no salary. Members serve as volunteers, and this is true for about less than 4% of the school boards in Ohio. Each of our candidates will provide an opening statement of 3 minutes and then followed by a question and answering session from the audience, and the question and answering session will be 1 minute, and then our question screeners here will give you a 30-minute warning. 30-second warning, followed by a stop. We'll let you finish your thought, and then we'll conclude at the end of that. So we'll start with Miss Allison Bibb Carson.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank the Shaker League of Women Voters for inviting me to this important forum tonight. Really great to see so many people in the room. So happy about that and happy to have folks out there in internet land. I'm Allison Bibb Carson. I'm the write-in candidate for the Shaker School Board. So I grew up here in Shaker. I attended Sussex School from grades kindergarten through 4th grade. And then I was in the first 5th grade class at Woodbury when it became an upper elementary school when they did that transition in 1987. I played in the orchestra right here in this building from grades 5 through 12, was a cheerleader here at the high school, and graduated in 1995. I am deeply steeped in Shaker Heights, and I feel like my very identity is rooted here, which is why when the opportunity presented itself for my husband, our 2 children, and I to move back to Northeast Ohio last year from DC for my position in strategic communications at Cleveland State, there was only one place that we were interested in living, and that was right here. Those of us who grew up here leave and then return often come back for the same reasons, that we want our children to have some of the same opportunities that we were afforded as children. But the reality is in our district is not everyone has that experience, even though they all deserve it. Had it not been for my super involved parents who served as my advocates at school and in the community, I could have been one of the people who slipped through the cracks. But today there are varying definitions of success and many different paths to get there. We no longer are a district or a society that can only expect our students to attend 4-year colleges and universities immediately after high school. We're preparing our children to be civic-minded individuals and the best they can possibly be at everything they do. And the foundation of a Shaker education needs to provide students with vision and drive and allow them to see all of their possibilities. One way I think that we do this is that we seek higher standards and consistent expectations and hold all of our students accountable to those set of Shaker values and ideals placing emphasis on mentorship, counseling, and non-judgmental support. Equity and inclusion must continue to be at the forefront of everything we do, and this starts by ensuring that the community is reflected in all facets of our school district. I think projects like Forward Together are so critical to our community. With or without the project, we have to put the plans in place throughout the city to reimagine how we use our school buildings. So I'm the only school board candidate who has children in elementary school and middle school, and obviously there are challenges that come with that. But I'm running now because I truly feel an obligation to represent working parents and with younger kids. It's imperative that I think someone on the school the school district has a representative who has experiences at those levels right now. And it's really like everything that there's work to be done, changes to be made. The only time I see it is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Laura Cover, or is it Cover? Cover, okay. Miss Laura Cover.
Thank you so much, League of Women Voters. I'm really excited to be here. I am Laura Cover. I'm running for school board, and I have 2 kids in the high school right now. When my husband and I decided to move here 10 years ago, we were just in love with Shaker. I mean, we loved the diversity of the community. We loved the fact that kids were coming out of school talking about equity in ways that just seemed so foreign to our East Coast ways. And we're really excited about it. And yet, when you walk into the high school today, you can still tell which are the classes that are advanced and which aren't based on the demographics of the kids that are sitting inside those rooms. And that is, I think, a moral imperative for us to fix. I'm a lifelong educator. I started out as a teacher in Washington, D.C. in 4th grade. So I learned firsthand the challenges of having a vision for your classroom and working really hard to get there, and working super hard on a lesson plan that may or may not work out that next day. I then went to work in administration. I was the head of human resources for Teach for America, which is a national nonprofit that works to recruit and place teachers across the country. And then I was the chief talent officer of Cleveland Metropolitan School District. And in these last few years, I've been consulting districts across the country. And in all of those places, what I have been really focused on is making sure that you find really great people to come work in your systems, and then you create a culture where they can thrive, because that's what you need to be true so that kids can succeed. So I had lots of opinions when I started out in the block parties this summer. I had lots of thoughts about what was working and not working in Shaker. And I learned a whole lot more about my community by meeting with a whole bunch of folks across our city. And what I heard was experiences that sounded like 2 different districts. There was one Shaker where kids were getting every resource they ever needed or desired. There were parents that felt totally supported and felt really engaged. And then there was this other Shaker where parents had to fight and advocate constantly just to get the minimal resources for their kids. And I just feel more strongly than ever that that should not be the case. So I'm excited to join the board. I'm excited to work with the board, and I'm excited to work with the district because I think we can do better, and I believe we really can.
Thank you. Ms. Heather Weingart.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening. This is my 2nd time doing this, and nonetheless intimidating, but grateful for the opportunity. I also want to recognize Mayor Weiss, who is in the audience tonight. I saw him earlier, so thank you for being here, and all of our other elected officials who have gone before us. My family and I moved here about 15 years ago. I have 2 children in the Shaker schools. I have a freshman and a senior, so it's a very strange and exciting fall for us. I've been engaged with the schools since the kids started and various capacities. Actually, I kind of laughed when Mr. Roeder mentioned his wife, because she's actually the person who got me involved in the PTO 15 years ago. So, and I still work with her. I, in fact, was texting with her tonight about the band boosters. But I've worked in various capacities with the schools, from PTO presidencies to the council presidency. And then in 2017, the then Board of Education asked me to chair the $30 million successful bond issue. And that campaign actually was the platform for me to decide to run for office in my subsequent election. I have been on the board for 4 years now. In the last 2, I've been president of the board. And it has always been an honor, while it has been the most challenging times in recent memories for everybody. We're better for the experience, and we're a better board for the experience. Some of our accomplishments that I'm most proud of is the creation of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. And some of you might have seen that we had our finalist interview last Friday. So if you haven't caught that, we'll put a little plug in there to make sure you go to shaker.org and check out Dr. Burnley's interview and learn a little bit more about that candidate. We have also successfully extended the operating levy cycle to 7 years since the last time the school went for an operating levy. That is a Shaker record. It is also extremely uncommon in public schools in Ohio. We also have adopted our 5-year strategic plan. As many of you know, we focused a lot on community collaboration over the last 4 years, including the completion of the Fernway Restoration Project after the fire there. We have also worked with the Shaker Schools Foundation on we lost track of my words there, on the I3 initiative, which stands for Inquiry, Innovation, and Imagination. These include student-driven maker spaces in all of our elementary schools, and our robotics and mechanics lab in our high school, which was one of the initiatives that I was most interested in when I was running for my first term. I'm running out of time. So the last thing I do want to mention is, going forward, pun intended, the Forward Together initiative is some of our greatest work. It is an unprecedented collaboration between the city, the schools, and the library on a long-range facilities plan that will bring synergies in cost reductions, but also in facilities and what we offer our students going forward.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll start with the questions, and as the other 2 candidate forums, we'll just do round robin, ask each of the candidates the same questions. And I'll start off with the first question will be, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the district today? And what would you do to fix it or improve it? And I'll start with Ms. Carson.
I'll take my mask off. I forgot to do it during the opening statement. I think one of the biggest challenges is definitely the equity and inclusion piece. Obviously, we are already diverse, so we don't have a problem with that. The D part is we're good, but the equity and inclusion piece is what kind of frightens me, quite frankly, about Shaker right now. And it was an issue when I was here. But I definitely think through the course consolidation and the detracking program, that is something that, is fantastic, I think, in many ways. So I'm really interested in learning exactly how that is going to end up and see measurements about that. The other thing that I think is most concerning to me about the school district right now is definitely our enrollment. We know enrollment is down and probably will continue to be down. That is the trend. So we have to figure out how we can get more people to see Shaker as a first choice district as it is.
Thank you. Let's cover.
I agree that I think equity is the biggest challenge that we have as a district right now. And I agree that I think it's been going on for a long time. I have had the opportunity to talk to board members in other districts across the country, and many of them have been really proud of the work that they have done to finally get an equity policy after the murder of George Floyd, or to finally get a chief diversity officer. And I say, yeah, Shaker's there. We did that. We've already done that. We have an equity policy. We've created a role for chief diversity, equity, inclusion here. And at the same time, we haven't put the teeth around it yet. So we have the plan, but we don't have the measures of how do we know whether we're making progress. We're not sharing data very effectively. And so we don't know what are the outcomes of our kids of color versus our white kids. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity within that space to get much more specific, both about what we're seeing and sharing, and also to be getting a whole lot more information coming from the community. I think that students and families know a lot about what's working and not working for their kids. And I think that we can be asking them a whole lot more proactively.
Thank you. Ms. Weingart?
Thank you. I also agree that diversity, equity, inclusion is one of the biggest, and I'm going to reframe it and say challenges that we face as a district. So I want to highlight what both of my future colleagues said, which is, I think I heard it right, is we need to make sure that we're communicating to our community at large on how we're achieving our goals, and that we also need to share data more effectively so we can benchmark. But I would take it a step further, and I would say what we need to do is we need to provide sustained professional development, and we need to expect that professional development. And I would say that we need to write it into the contracts of our faculty and staff as a benchmark. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, I will start with Ms. Cover. What are your specific ideas about how Shaker schools can recruit, hire, and retain Black teachers?
I love this question. So when I went to Cleveland Metropolitan School District, I was coming from Teach for America, where we had been really successful at recruiting an incredibly diverse set of teachers throughout the country. So I was a little cocky about it. So we got to Cleveland schools and I was like, all right, we're going to go to the HBCUs. We're going to go just make sure that people know about this opportunity in Cleveland and they will come. And that did not work out. It was a very expensive endeavor that did not get me very far. And what I appreciate now more than ever is that actually teachers like to be where they are from. They like to be in the communities that they have been in their entire lives. And we have incredible talent that's right here. I think we need to think about what our internal talent looks like. So who are the teaching assistants that are already in classrooms, who are diverse, who are so loyal already to Shaker and what's happening within Shaker, and how do we help them with resources to go and get their degrees and to become teachers. Our alumni are incredible. We have these outstanding alum that are graduating every year, and where are they going? We can track them. We know we can find them, and we can bring them back to Shaker, particularly around the time they are about to have a baby, because I find that grandparents are really a good bring back.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ms. Weingart?
Yes, thank you. Having a staff and a faculty that looks like our students is one of the most important things that we can do here in Shaker. There's a couple of initiatives that we've started that I'm really looking forward to exploring on how they're going to work going forward. One of them is that we have an administrative intern track right now, where we are identifying people that are already on our staff and creating a sustainable track for them. They're going to work for a year under our administrators. They are not working in the classroom at that time. And then the goal is that we would be able to place them in an administrative role with our district. The other group that we have is our Black Teacher Task Force. And we started that with the initial implementation of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. They've been around for about a year, and they have identified key areas where we can grow our existing staff and recruit outside talent. So I think those two things will help us over the next couple of years. And as a board, it'll be extremely important that we benchmark that and ask for report outs on a regular basis so that we can get good data.
Thank you. And Ms. Bibb Carson?
Yeah, as Heather mentioned, Black teachers tend to recruit Black teachers. My mom is a Black teacher, and she's a retired Black teacher, or a retired teacher who happens to be Black. She was recruited to work. She was working, this was in the 90s, in the Cleveland district, and was recruited by another Black teacher to work in the Orange district because they desperately needed more teachers of color. So that is one way that I definitely think we do it. Black teachers know Black teachers nationwide. I definitely think, definitely having that HBCU pipeline is key. Though I understand that, teachers like to kind of live where they are, but that's where marketing, and this is what I do for a living, that's where marketing Shaker and marketing the Northeast Ohio and Greater Cleveland is so important. Talking about all the things that we can take advantage of here and the cost of living. That's one of the reasons why my family moved back from DC, was that the lower cost of living. And that is what makes Shaker very desirable. So I would like to see recruiting efforts there as well.
Thank you. Next question, I will start with Ms. Weingart. Can you summarize the educational and systemic changes in the schools in the last 2 to 3 years and research behind those changes?
Oh, in 60 seconds. I can try. So what we've done is when we wrote our strategic plan, we had 2 key variables that we focused on, and that was equity and the International Baccalaureate program. And doing that sort of directs all the rest of our efforts. So we took a look at our staff and we said, okay, where are we providing supports? And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention what we all know. We've been in COVID for 18 months. So some of the efforts that we were planning on have sort of been diverted in other directions. But one of the things that we stayed true to is looking at where are there gaps and how can we better staff those gaps. So this year, for the first time, we have literacy specialists in our classrooms, and we have at all of our buildings. We also have built-in time frames in addition to class time where children are given, each and every child is given additional support during the school day, every day, every week, to help fill those gaps. There are several more initiatives that I could talk about, but I only have 60 seconds and I have my stop sign, so
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. Ms. Bibb Carson?
So obviously, I've only been here a year, been back in Shaker for a year, so it's hard to really speak to what has been going on in the school district for me for the past 2 years. What I do know, and what I'm really excited about, and that's something that we mentioned earlier, was the course consolidation, the core classes consolidation, and the detracking that is going on in the system, and the detracking went into effect during the pandemic. So I think it would be really interesting to see post-pandemic, if we ever get out of the pandemic, where that actually leads. We understand that the curriculum can't just change because we change our model. The district has to ensure that, teachers are provided with ongoing professional development so that they can teach to a broader group of students.
Thank you. Ms. Cover?
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on the detracking piece because I think that it's one of the most important things that the district has done in at least the last couple of years. And I think, and I think the reason for it is, the reason why I think it's the most exciting is that we know it is one of the most racist systems that exist, tracking. And we have seen across the country as school systems have started to get rid of it. What we've seen is excellent rise across the district. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I also think that it takes a lot of courage to do it because you also don't see a lot of support usually for these big changes that mean something's going to change for my student without knowing exactly what the outcomes are going to be. So I think it was really courageous of the district and the board to take it on. And I think it's a really important shift. And I think really sort of aligns to the work that you all were doing in terms of thinking about equity first as your linchpin.
Good, thank you. Next question, I will start with Ms. Bibb Carson. There are inequalities between resources and facilities at the various elementary schools. How would you help correct that?
So we know that equality and equity are not the same things, and that we have schools, especially at the elementary school level, that have varying different needs. They have different needs for different resources based on the student population. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure.
Please?
There are inequalities between resources and facilities at the various elementary schools. How would you help correct that?
Okay. So I think through the Forward Together campaign, this is definitely key. Now is the time for us to invest in our schools and capital improvements. We've seen it at Fernway, and my son goes to Fernway, and obviously the unfortunate thing is the way we got to this Fernway being set, a new school virtually is due to the fire. But that also gave us an opportunity to I think look inward and see that everyone in the community, all of the students in the elementary schools, in the middle school, and the high school, quite frankly, we need to take a better look at our facilities.
Thank you. Let's cover.
When we were moving here, my husband works for Case, and they gave us a realtor to take us around. And she did not want to show us anything in Shaker because she said, they're always redistricting schools in Shaker, and you don't want to go live there. And when I found out more about it, I was like, that's exactly why I want to live in Shaker. We didn't recommend her to other people after that either. But I do think what the behind that idea was that we should have equity across our system and that we should have representation across the system. And I think what's happened over the last couple decades is that we don't see that equity across anymore. And so I agree. I think the Forward Together is a really important opportunity for us to really take a look at how are we zoning our kids? What kind of resources are we giving our kids? How are we making sure that there is a building that does something that's specific for a certain set of kids and make sure that those kids are there? And I also think Forward Together is really dependent on everyone getting out and going to these community meetings that are coming up over the next
Thank
couple
you.
weeks. And so, as you see those emails coming in, it is so critical, because one of the things that I had this moment sitting in Moreland with families talking about how they couldn't get to this Mercer, right? Like their kids were bused, but they couldn't personally get to Mercer, and how important it is for you to know your teacher and how important that is. And I know one of the ideas coming up, could mean that there's more crossing across the city. And so thinking about
Thank
what
you.
those are going to be important.
Thanks. All right, and Ms. Weingart?
It was a great answer.
Mhm.
So I think, hindsight, looking back, Fernway was a tragedy, but what it did do for us is it provided us an opportunity to see what is actually possible. And from a long range facilities standpoint, it sets the standards. So there's a couple of different, we talked about Forward Together a lot tonight. That is the way forward to study our facilities and to take a look at who has what, who's going where, which students are walking, which students are bused, and look at that. But it's also, in the meantime, while we are waiting for those interim options from the Forward Together process and vetting them with the community, we also have the opportunity to work with the Shaker Schools Foundations like we have. I mentioned in my opening statement about the I3 initiative. That is a perfect expression of how we can utilize our foundation to equalize resources across our schools. Putting a maker space in each one of our elementary schools was something that we weren't even discussing 3 years ago. And so it is possible to capitalize on the power of our foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question is, I'll start with Ms. Cover. The value of high quality pre-K and student development is well known. How would you approach providing more students with a higher level of pre-K, and how would you fund it?
So I think we talked already about how enrollment is decreasing in Shaker. It's decreasing across the entire region. We're not so surprised by it. And we know that one of the best ways to get kids into the system is to get them into pre-K. And all of the research says that is the best return on investment that we can put our money into. So I would say that is something that we should be putting our money into. We should be ensuring that there is pre-K throughout our buildings. We have room. And we know there's also a desire and a need. I think my understanding was that there was 30 families on a wait list this year. There's no reason why anyone should be on a wait list. Like, this is exactly when we should be putting our resources.
Thank you. Ms. Weingart?
I agree. I would love to have universal pre-K here in Shaker sooner rather than later. And I hate to sound redundant, but again, that's where our Forward Together initiative becomes so powerful in figuring out, we do have excess capacity in our buildings, but does that mean that we close buildings, or does that mean that we redesign our grade bands and offer more opportunities? As far as funding goes, the Shaker schools have, in the 2 different classes that we have now, we do offer scholarships, and we also have the tuition is less than what you would pay at another pre-K. So we are always looking at how we can juggle our resources, and I think there's more opportunities for that as well. Once we look into the facilities planning, we can figure out grants and resources that we can get there. So
Thank you. Ms. Bibb Carson?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with both of them. We know that people are still having babies. So definitely having, and they're having babies, but then they're leaving the district or going to another district. So I definitely think having universal pre-K here in Shaker and keeping kids in Shaker and starting them in Shaker, so that, and then having the facilities for them to move up through the district is definitely key to keeping families here.
Thank you. Next question, I will start with Ms. Weingart. What is your point of view on career technical education? Are Shaker schools doing enough? And what additions or changes would you like to see?
Well, I think Ms. Carson, when she in her opening statement mentioned how important the different pathways for students are. I am a huge fan of career tech learning. Shaker Schools is currently part of a, I want to say, I'm going to get it wrong. We're part of a huge collaboration of schools where our students can take CTI classes at all of surrounding area schools. This year is the first year that Shaker has offered 2 classes of our own here in our building, which is, again, something that I've been pushing for several years. I'm very excited about that opportunity. Excess space and creative minds can get us to where we need to go so that we have more kids coming to Shaker to take our career tech classes than leaving Shaker. But I am actually very fond of our consortium and the accreditations and certifications that our students come out of Shaker schools with allow them to take full-time jobs at salaries well beyond many other districts. So
Thank you. Ms. Bibb Carson?
Yes, I definitely think collaboration is key with, and then bringing the surrounding districts into Shaker, and then hopefully we don't want our kids to leave Shaker, but definitely having that collaboration where maybe they're going back and forth, or that we're bringing everyone, as Heather said, we have the space, so why not use it? And definitely, I think it's important to put students who are on a tech pipeline, putting them into a pipeline where it might be, collaborating with Tri-C and with other, community colleges in the area where they can get the training that they need. And I definitely think, finding out ways that they can get hands-on training while they're in high school, whether it's, at another school or here in Shaker, is definitely important.
Thank you. Ms. Cover?
Education in America looks very similar to what it looked like in 1950. I mean, this is like the slowest changing system in our country, I think. And so I'm pretty excited about career tech. I'm pretty excited about any of the pieces of innovation that's happening within Shaker that really is getting at what are kids' interests and then creating opportunities that connect to their interests. I think Design Lab starting out in elementary school changes what might be in a kid's head about what they might want to do. I think the Innovation Center in the high school is doing some really incredible things to let students really choose what their academic future looks like. And I think what's happening around in the Career Tech and the consortium, I think, is excellent. And I think there's so many more opportunities and so many more ways that we can help work towards mastery and skills as opposed to the same stuff that our grandparents are doing.
Thank you. The next question, I'll start with Ms. Bibb Carson. It is a multi-part question. So if you need me to repeat it, just let me know.
Okay.
There is much talk about the district attempting to change how education is done. Why is it important? What models are being studied by the board? Who is the board taking direction and guidance from? How is the board communicating with the community about the benefits of the changes? You want me to repeat?
Sure.
Okay. There is much talk about the district attempting to change how education is done. Why is it important? What models are being studied by the board? Who is the board taking direction and guidance from? And how is the board communicating with the community about the expected benefits of such changes?
Okay. So we talked about it. How we talked about it a little bit anyway about the detracking and course consolidation programs, and also just general diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that all of our students here in Shaker have have equal access to everything that they need in order to be successful. So why that's important is just what I said. So they can be successful in whatever they choose to be, whenever they choose to be it. I can't speak to really what the board is doing at this point right now, other than we've said it before, the Forward Together initiative. But I definitely think communicating, and this is what I do for a living, communicating with residents who do not have children in the district is definitely key to our success with this. Obviously, residents who don't have children, they're paying taxes just like we are. So everyone has got to have a stake in it. Everyone has to be involved, and everyone has to know what we're doing.
Thank you. Ms. Cover?
So I mean, I'm like so interested in what might be behind that question about what's being changed, because I think that there's probably more changes that should be made and they should be happening faster. But I do think change is hard and people sort of struggle with it, and having that information is super important, as Alison was just talking about, right? Like, to actually make changes, you need to make sure people have the information. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have at Shaker is we send out a lot of information and it's really hard to kind of digest it all. Heather was just sharing a stat with me the other day about the percentage of jobs that don't exist today that our kids are going to be in. Of course, we need to change what education looks like when we don't even know what jobs our kids are going to be doing 10 years, even 5 years from now. And I think it is imperative that as we continue to make the changes that are important for the district, we continue to do the real stakeholder engagement that needs to happen, which includes both the communication out, getting feedback back in, and also the training and support that needs to happen for our teachers and educators.
Thank you. Ms. Weingart?
Yes, so the reason why it's important is because what we're doing in our classrooms right now is putting a square peg in a round hole. We are asking our teachers to give a 21st century education in a 20th century classroom. I would challenge anybody to go and talk to our teachers and ask them what it is they're being asked to deliver versus the place that they have to deliver it in. As far as who the board is taking direction from or models that we're looking at, just over the last year, a couple of different examples. We have partnered with Westwind, which is a consultant group, and they have built vertical bands between our math teachers from middle school to the high school so that we can start to grab our students in the 7th and 8th grade, figure out who's going to need some supports and then work with our high school teachers to make sure the supports are there before they even walk in the building. Or in a couple weeks, we have a whole bunch of teachers going to see Joe Bowler. Virtually, because Joe Bowler is out of Stanford. But to learn about differentiating math and heterogeneous classrooms and how those work. So those are all the things that we're currently doing, and we will continue to pursue that.
Thank you. We'd like to thank the candidates for school board for coming out as well. Let's give them a round of applause. And tomorrow, the video will be posted at Facebook at League of Women Voters, Shaker Heights. And our website will be Google League of Women Voters, Shaker Heights. So the video will be posted there tomorrow. I'm not sure what time, but sometime tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance to see the whole candidate form, all three of them, please log on to one of those websites and check us out. Thank you. And we'd like to thank Shaker Heights for the use of this facility. Annette, do you have any final words that you'd like to? Thank you. Everyone have a great evening. Thank you.